right, welcome in to Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses and the 8 guys in upstate New York, the governing body, that we're all living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and most importantly, a kid raised in Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and 80s. As I always do, just a warning, folks, here. I've gotten some notes through social media, YouTube, and the like about laughing and taking things lightly. Folks, we don't take any of this lightly. None of this. But I do believe that laughter heals the soul, as does crying, as we sometimes do on this show. So we try to have some fun healing with each episode, sarcasm, humor, and more. It is never meant to offend the fine people that might stumble into this little show and might be vulnerable. So please know, giant hugs. We do laugh, but there are some things here with each subject that trigger each of us differently in our experience or our time as Jehovah's Witnesses. So again, welcome in. And I've got one that has always been a personal favorite for me from a very, very young age that I want to share this week, get your opinions, thoughts on, etc. So let's jump in. As a young Jehovah's Witness, or if you're raised in Jehovah's Witnesses, you go through a rigorous brainwashing routine from birth, on earth, but from birth. For me personally, it started in the mid-70s or so with the Bible Stories book, which was brought to young children of Jehovah's Witnesses in 1978, and a glorious book filled with kid-friendly illustrations that drew us little people closer to Jehovah, allegedly. The weekly schedule of meetings, the endless publications, the push for personal study, the family study night, studying for every single one of those meetings prior to attending them. In my day, those meetings consisted of the theocratic school, which is now gone. Jesus decided it wasn't needed anymore, apparently. The service meeting, the book study, also gone after Jesus' guys said it was critical to meet in small groups in order to survive the Great Tribulation. And then, of course, studying for the Watchtower study on Sundays, of which I conducted for 8 years as an elder. And then, of course, in more recent times, all the new fancy Jehovah's Witness videos, the music videos, Eat Your Heart Out, MTV. These are some really, really well-written, high-production music videos. That is sarcasm. And what I think is one of the most appalling, disgusting, and dangerous things these guys have ever rolled out, which is the Caleb and Sophia Pixar-inspired videos filled with all sorts of subtle messaging and propaganda for a young, developing mind. But as a witness, you're exposed to this thing early, very, very early, all of it coming at you. It's almost like trying to get a drink out of a fire hydrant. It's literally overwhelming. But for me as a little guy in the 1970s and 80s, it graduated, as we do when we mature, to memorizing things. I remember memorizing kingdom melodies. Am I the only one that can still sing every verse of "We're Jehovah's Witnesses, we speak"? Okay, fearlessness, ours is the God, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure I'm not the only one. That might have triggered a few people. I learned that at a very young age, and I am ashamed to admit that I still have that song living in my brain. But from there, you continue to mature. You begin to realize that somewhere along the way, unbeknownst to you, subtly, you were also memorizing principles, concepts, teachings, Bible characters, what they meant, the decisions they made, and even Bible verses, which was highly encouraged as a young person in the 70s and 80s to learn the Bible forward and back, memorize the scriptures, know your way around it. It was the map to everlasting life. And let me tell you, folks, I just reeled off stuff there off the top of my head that a child or even a new Bible study as an adult is exposed to in Jehovah's Witnesses. They know what they are doing, particularly to children, to kids. And let me tell you, it works. It works. I've been out for 14 years, and I still know the Bible based on personality and effort better than most Jehovah's Witnesses currently in that I encounter. I still know that stupid song. I could still tell you where to reference certain decisions in the Watchtower literature. On and on it goes. So this week, for those that can relate, I'm sure you're going to recognize where this is going just by citing the following Bible verse. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Does that ring a bell? Let me lay it out for you. Do not be misled. Bad associations spoil useful habits. Ah, yes, bad association. And for those of us raised in Jehovah's Witnesses, this is just a phrase lifted from 1 Corinthians 15:33 that was basically tattooed onto our psyche. As if controlling your hair, controlling your skin, controlling your thoughts, controlling everything else in your life wasn't enough. A Jehovah's Witness is told from a very young age to stay away from worldly people. So if you thought you could choose who your friends are, your closest confidants, your circle, you can't. What constitutes a worldly person, you may ask? Let me keep it simple. Anyone and everyone that isn't a baptized Jehovah's Witness or on their way to being a baptized Jehovah's Witness. I present to you the Watchtower of August 15th, 1991, page 29, which gives us this nugget of Holy Spirit. It says, quote, "Do not be misled. Bad associations spoil useful habits." Do you agree with that? Here comes the mind stuff. As Paul indicated, it is easy to be misled in the matter of association. A person may appear friendly and agreeable, but if he does not share your concern for Jehovah's service or even believe in the Bible's promises, he is a bad associate. Why? Because his life is based on different principles, and things that are very important to a Christian may be of little consequence to him. End quote. Buried in that paragraph are all kinds of questions that should trigger in your brain. Synapses should be firing. Was Paul a good associate? He seemed to hate women and gay people and anyone that didn't say what he told him to do. See his letters to many congregations. But from the beginning, it narrows it down. And 1 Corinthians 15:33 is one of those scriptures they hammer home as quickly as possible when you become associated with Jehovah's Witness. Here's the thing. From a very young age, I always struggled with the whole worldly person thing or bad association thing in general. I developed my own cognitive skills, and it seemed reasonable to me to not hang out with drug dealers or maybe dictators. But I can't be friends with a young guy or a girl in my 4th grade class? Because why exactly? Well, you heard it for yourself. We are going to take a look at this subject, at what a Jehovah's Witness is constantly told regarding all things bad association. And you will note, and I will emphasize, this starts immediately when you come into contact with witnesses. If you're raised in it, boom, 1 Corinthians 15:33, I'm sure it triggered at least one other listener out there. If you're an adult, they almost instantly try to eliminate any other outside influence other than theirs. And folks, I'm here to discuss it. Let's just call this out while I can. This episode will feature lots of different strange peeks into my mind from childhood through all the way through to being an elder. The way Jehovah's Witnesses view non-Jehovah's Witnesses is both fascinating and dripping in some of the most bizarre hypocrisy you will ever encounter with this religion. You go to a kingdom hall, you go to a district convention, a circuit assembly, they use terms like neighbors, and we are out here talking to our neighbors today in the field service, but then go on to label those same neighbors as worldly and doomed to die at Armageddon. People will step over their dead bodies. Not kidding. So let's go back to the beginning, at least for me. Aside from 1 Corinthians 15:33 pounded into my head as a little kid, we were also given an example that we could point to, straight from the pages of the magical book known as the Bible. I'm sure some, and I know that this may have changed with time and age and the different dynamics in this wonderful little organization, but some here will remember the story that was shared with us as kids, at least during the 70s, 80s, possibly, well, they probably still do it. And that is the incredible story of Dinah. We were sent to the pages of the Bible, most specifically Bible stories books, most specifically dramas at conventions, Watchtower articles, and the like, on all things Dinah. In that same kid-friendly book known as My Book of Bible Stories, we were treated to story number 20, entitled Dinah Gets into Trouble. And it's based on the account from Genesis chapter 34, verses 1 through 31. And it's incredible. The Bible Stories book version that kids are being exposed to both visually in the book and also audio tapes at the time, way back when, dramas, all the stuff that they use, is fairly quick to read, but makes a massive impact on a child on how to choose friends by means of the governing body. It's very difficult to make this funny, this story, when you realize what the whole story in the Bible at Genesis 34 and Dinah herself is really about. But the 8 guys in upstate New York take something this serious, this heinous, this gross and criminal, and misapply almost everything about the story and hand it to children to scare Jehovah's Witnesses, both kids and adults, when it comes to making friends. Not kidding. So I'm going to read this right from the pages of the Bible Stories book. It's a very quick read, makes all the points it needs to a child's young mind, or even an adult as they apply it in Watchtowers as you age. So I'm going to make this quick. But in story 20, on all things association and how to choose friends, we learn about Dinah. And here's what it says in the Bible Stories book. It says this: "Do you see who Dinah is going to visit? She's going to see some of the girls who live in the land of Canaan. Would her father Jacob be happy about this? To help answer this question, try to remember what Abraham and Isaac thought about the women in Canaan. Did Abraham want his son Isaac to marry a girl from Canaan? No, he did not. Did Isaac and Rebekah want their son Jacob to marry a Canaanite girl? No, they did not. Do you know why? It was because these people in Canaan worshipped false gods. They were not good people to have as husbands and wives, and they weren't good people to have as close friends. So we can be sure that Jacob would not be pleased that his daughter was making friends with these Canaanite girls." Insert my own thought here. When you read the account in Genesis 34, there's no mention of Dinah sneaking out at night, climbing out the window to go visit Canaanite girls. In verse 1, it simply makes the point that she went to visit girls in the land. That's it, folks. First verse of the story. But from the word go, children now are exposed to the fact that Dinah is doing something sneaky, and she's running out to hang out with Canaanite girls without her father knowing, one way or the other. The insinuation is made. Back to the Bible Stories, quote, "Sure enough, Dinah got into trouble. Can you see that Canaanite man in the picture who's looking at Dinah? His name is Shechem. One day when Dinah came on a visit, Shechem took Dinah and forced her to lie down with him. This was wrong, gee, you think? Because only married men and women are supposed to lie down together. This bad thing that Shechem did to Dinah led to a lot more trouble. When Dinah's brothers heard about what had happened, they were very angry. Two of them, Simeon and Levi, were so angry that they took swords and went into the city and caught the men by surprise. Gonna learn the details on that one. They and their brothers killed Shechem and all the other men. Again, we'll get into this. Jacob was angry because his sons did this bad thing. Did they? And that's it, folks. It ends. One page, 4 or 5 paragraphs to a child with a picture of Dinah going out with some girls and a guy looking on off to the right, leaning against a post. And here is the only thing they want you as a child or adult to get out of this horror story. Quote, how did all this trouble get started? Right from the page there. It was because Dinah made friends with people who did not obey God's laws. We will not want to make such friends, will we? End quote. If your jaw is on the ground, and it should be, because you realize that this entire story in Genesis 34 is written by some Jewish guy that doesn't want another nation moving into his territory, you'd be correct. However, your jaw should be on the ground when you consider what it's really about. It's about a guy named Shechem raping and sexually assaulting Dinah, a girl who just went outside to see some girlfriends. They try to use verse 1 of chapter 34, which says she went out to hang out with the girls of the land. That's all it says, folks, to build an entire story around not hanging out with people that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, when the entire story is truly about rape. The Bible story version also neglects to share that they don't want the kids exposed to it, fascinatingly enough. It also neglects to share that her brothers tricked all the dudes in the land to get circumcised so they could all be friends. You got to be like us if we want to be pals. Sound familiar? Be like us and we will like you? So the guys in the land all get circumcised. By the way, if you're referencing all found in Genesis 34, they all get circumcised. And well, as the Bible says, because again, they want to be friends. Okay, we'll do it your way. I mean, talk about a sacrifice. What? As the Bible says, while they were still sore. And yeah, let me tell you, if you're a grown man getting circumcised, you're going to be a little sore, folks. Simeon and Levi come in with swords and kill them all. By the way, I'm here for it. Shechem raped their sister. I don't know what these other guys did. I don't think they deserve to be slaughtered or killed. Shechem certainly did, by even today's standards. And here is a doozy. A young Jehovah's Witness kid never hears from the magic book, the Bible, or my book of Bible stories from the governing body. But in verse 27 of Genesis 34, it shares this oft overlooked detail from this little story that they say is about making friends. It says, quote, from the Bible, verse 27, Jacob's other sons came upon the slain men and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks, their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field. They also took all their possessions, captured all their little children and their wives, and plundered everything in the houses. End quote. Look, if anyone sexually assaults my sister, look out. I get it. Shechem, Levi, Simeon, taking care of Shechem. But everyone else in the neighborhood? Innocent little children and the wives of every man who also was not part of this gross criminal act, slaughtered, killed, plundered by Jehovah's guys? They didn't think to include this in the Bible Stories book. Gee, I wonder why. It's absolutely incredible. And this, by extension, on this particular subject of bad association, is a fantastic snapshot on how the governing body views bad association. They take a story about two different tribes looking to form an agreement and be friends, mix in a sexual assault, and then the supposed good guys kill everyone and plunder women and children for themselves. They take this story to teach Jehovah's Witnesses who don't read their own Bibles or the literature very carefully that they can't be friends with the kid one desk over in junior high school. That you can't be friends with a coworker. That you can't date or fall in love with a non-Jehovah's Witness. Oh, and from my own very strange mind, that someone bad association never, that this term, this whole idea of bad association, never applies to the good guys, Jacob's sons, who also plunder and destroy women and children. Sort of like the governing body themselves. It's unbelievable that they take this story that has nothing to do with making friends in the neighborhood, riding bikes with the kid next door, going to the concert, going to prom, being friends with someone at work. They take this story and force it into the minds of Jehovah's Witnesses. Land grabs, sexual assault, pillaging women and children, because in verse 1, Dinah simply went out to be with the other girls in the land. Ah, yes, food at the proper time, the concept of bad association, according to 8 guys in upstate New York. Millions are supposed to believe that this story applies to them in everyday life in 2023. That every man you meet is Shechem, and every girl is Dinah. It all applies today. We're told to believe that Jehovah included this story to say you can't ride bikes with that neighborhood boy next door. And for the record, I never obeyed this as a kid, or frankly, even as an adult. I was a rebellious, unbaptized teen who played sports, dated lots of girls in high school that were JW girls, and some of these same people are very close friends decades later at middle age, and thank God they were there after I exited the cult. But many Jehovah's Witnesses look at this story and this counsel and think again, they're forcing this into the mind of a baby brain. And they take this and they obey it. And once they leave the organization, they're alone. They're very likely shunned by family and friends with zero friends or support because they obeyed this bullshit. Say it with me. It's a cult. Isolate. Insulate. Be completely dependent on 8 guys in upstate New York you will never meet and you will never know. And I present to you the earliest exposure for this baby brain to the concept of bad association. Thank you, governing body. Thank you for the Dinah story. And wasn't it something when I got older and actually read the Bible and read this and I went, wait the hell a minute. This has nothing to do with picking friends. What? And you might have missed a couple of subtle points here. And the good guys plunder women and children? It's just so unbelievable. It's just so unbelievable. Let's just cut to the chase on this subject. If you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you are bad association. That's it. Keep in mind, any and all Jehovah's Witnesses, at any time they are baptized and become a Jehovah's Witness, they are told they have God's Holy Spirit on them at all times. The angels watch on and guide them. I often use this when a Jehovah's Witness asks me something, when they, in the chance encounter I may have with one. I just say to them, I'm an apostate. I left and I know nothing. You're a Jehovah's Witness and you have bucket loads of Holy Spirit coursing through your veins. Why don't you know the answer to these questions? Why are you asking me? Like so many other Jehovah's Witness myths or loopholes, they say that isn't true. That it isn't true you're a bad associate if you're not a baptized Jehovah's Witness. It's the most bizarre urban myth, just like kids who don't get baptized, their parents still hang out with them when they reject the organization. It's another bizarre myth that someone started for, in my opinion, to self-soothe because it's so criminal and so disgusting. Many Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you that they're friends with lots of non-Jehovah's Witnesses at work, school, in my neighborhood, maybe even unbelieving family. Can you imagine loving your family unconditionally? But that is not, and I want to repeat, not what the governing body teaches their people. It's not what Jesus guys in New York say. And there are millions and billions of pages of this. Worldly people are categorized as those outsized Jehovah's spiritual paradise where the weeping and the gnashing of their teeth are taking place. That everyone not a Jehovah's Witness is void of character, they're void of love, kindness, intellect. They reside in the devil's playground. Because after all, and here's another one of those scriptures that they get into your brain early as a kid or as a Bible study. After all, everyone that's not in a kingdom hall, everyone that's not a Jehovah's Witness, they are out there in the devil's playground. They reside, they live their life in a world. In fact, as the Bible, and they like to say, the whole world, and it is lying in the power of the wicked one. Another one of those scriptures, 1 John 5:19. Isn't it tragic that I know that? Everyone outside of Kingdom Hall, everyone not a Jehovah's Witness, everyone not preaching, everyone not active, everyone not getting baptized, everyone qualifies as bad association. But a witness will tell you, oh no, it's more nuanced than that. Let me tell you, it is not. Smart people have made it more nuanced if they're a witness. They're kind to other people, but that is not the messaging they're getting. Au contraire, it is significantly different than that. As a kid, I would often struggle with this entire idea that character didn't matter. I couldn't wrap my head around that. It only mattered if any person I encountered was a Jehovah's Witness. I've met plenty of people as a kid and as an adult that were amazing people, high character, kind, charitable, humble, loving, but they weren't baptized Jehovah's Witnesses, so I was told I couldn't be close to them. I couldn't have a friendship. I couldn't hang out with them, have a dinner, take a hike, date one. Oh God, no. And on top of all of that, I knew in the back of my head that if they didn't get on board with what I believed, they'd all be dead soon anyway. Jehovah was going to kill them. Jehovah was going to kill them. Illustration after illustration of Jesus on a white horse with guys that looked like his clone. All of them guys, another episode, another time. White beards riding on horses with swords and bows and arrows to kill all these nice people I knew. What? What? But I wasn't alone. Apparently, many others among Jehovah's Witnesses, other people like me, often wondered how this could be true too. They wonder, wait a minute, these are nice people. They're good folks. What do you mean Jehovah's going to kill them? Yeah, he is. He doesn't agree with the grade 8 in upstate New York. Would you like some proof? If you're a PMO, PME, I know I've said it before, Pomeranian, I don't know all the acronyms. Please know that the message you get is that worldly people, and that means everyone not a Jehovah's Witness, is bad. The Watchtower of April 15th, 1993 makes this comment, quote, "Some worldly youths may seem nice simply because they do not smoke, use bad language, or engage in immoral sex. If they're not pursuing righteousness, though, their fleshly thinking and attitudes can easily rub off on you. Besides, how much could you have in common with unbelievers?" End quote. That's right. These nice people, I'm not talking about people who smoke, use bad language, have sex. That still doesn't make them bad people, but that's a whole nother subject. They may have some bad habits. They may have some stuff they're struggling with, addiction, other things. It doesn't make them bad people. But the bottom line is, anyone that doesn't agree with Tony Morris or Stephen Lett and all their other pals, the other 6 guys, the other fellas in New York, that are nothing more than scam artists, frankly, who take people's money, lie, and kill people, if they don't agree with them, they are bad association. By definition, as a Jehovah's Witness. It continues. And believe me, I could go for hours on the proof. I try to stay away from that because it gets so boring. And I don't want to encourage people. Well, let me back up. I want to encourage people to look at this with an open mind, not to necessarily dig deep and to buy into the propaganda that these 8 guys roll out about every living, breathing soul on the planet. But let's continue. The Watchtower Study Edition, August 2015, makes this point. Quote, "Although we want to be kind to everyone, we should not become close friends with those who do not obey God. It would be wrong for one of Jehovah's Witnesses to date someone who is not a faithful, baptized servant of Jehovah. It is much more important to have God's approval than to be accepted by people who do not love Him. We should be close friends with only those who do God's will." End quote. This was specific to a romantic relationship or friendship, but the message is very clear. Not only do you not date someone who isn't a Jehovah's Witnesses, they state right there, we shouldn't be close friends with them. We shouldn't go out and do things with them. We shouldn't take them into our inner circle because they don't do God's will, as it says here, August 2015 Study Edition Watchtower, as a faithful baptized member of Jehovah's Witnesses. It eliminates every other person outside a kingdom hall and beyond, as we will see. And they do this all the time. This is one example, one reference. They do this all the time. They point to character traits of Jehovah's Witnesses versus everyone else on planet Earth, and they compare them side by side. But here's the problem I always had in my time as a dub, at least from my own experiences, and I was in it most of my life. I personally have known many, and I do mean many more, non-Jehovah's Witnesses with better character, deeper character, more knowledgeable character, a depth of kindness and love, a depth of humility. I've known many more people like that were not Jehovah's Witnesses, and I know this is going to twist some people the wrong way, than I did inside Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the truth. I'm not going to blanket it that every Jehovah's Witness isn't a good person. Oh, that's simply not true. I wouldn't be doing this little podcast if I believed that. I believe there are wonderful, incredible, kind, loving, trapped people in Jehovah's Witnesses, trapped mentally and intellectually. But to say that there are not wonderful, incredible, loving, humble people outside Jehovah's Witnesses, and again, I could reel off Watchtower articles that say that very thing, is just insane. It's insane. Somewhere right now, there is a person who's not a Jehovah's Witness feeding a starving child and getting them water. There's a brain surgeon saving a life. There are people flying airplanes, safely getting people to their destination. On and on I could go. None of them are Jehovah's Witnesses. None of them are bad association. 1 Corinthians 15:33. And let me tell you about some of the things I saw in my time as an elder, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now remember, the governing body in this matter of association and friendship draws a very strict, rigid, distinct line between us and them. So you're not supposed to be a Jehovah's Witness and see any of these character traits mentioned in these last things, these terrible things that people do that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. You're not supposed to see it. Let me tell you, that is a lie. This especially holds true during my time as an elder. And let me tell you, as an elder, you know everything. Even on the judicial committees and the things going on in the congregation that you're not supposed to know based on confidentiality, only the 3 guys handling it should know. It's all garbage, you know. And let me tell you, some of it is pretty damn ugly inside a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Really ugly. If you think I'm being dramatic or bitter, or you're someone hanging on tight, you think you've landed on a mentally diseased apostate show, let me tell you what, this is all true. And it's easily provable. Here's a few of the things I had to deal with as a Jehovah's Witness elder. And remember, these were the associates. These were the people I'm told I should surround myself with. They're baptized. They're following the governing body. This is the friendships I should cultivate. Here's just a sampling. I dealt with more affairs and more adultery than I can remember. It was extremely common. And in more recent times, I happen to know that there is even more of this going on within the organization due to young marriages. See our episode on dating, due to the fact that witnesses have literally started to adopt, and I'm not kidding, there are several reports of underground swinger cultures, people wife swapping. That was going on when I was involved. And remember, this is good association. These are the baptized people. I can't even tell you how much of that I dealt with. Most of it's left my brain. There were so many. I dealt with, by the way, I want to preface this that these people weren't necessarily evil people either. They were troubled people. Aren't we all? We've all got scars and problems we deal with due to our own individual upbringing, personality, you name it. But again, when you compare it to what the governing body tells Jehovah's Witnesses, they've drawn this rigid line. Jehovah's Witnesses are all good. Every single person outside Jehovah's Witnesses is bad. Okay, addictions. Lots of them, folks. Tax evasion. Can't even tell you, with the brothers who were successful financially with businesses, how many of them didn't pay taxes. Alcoholism, probably one of the number one problems, as I've said on this show. Tremendous amount of porn addiction when the internet started to get red hot in the 90s. And here's the one for those who are doubting and thinking this is just bitter pills from someone who left. The amount of spousal abuse and child abuse that's in the headlines, that's provable, is all real. But remember, bad associations spoil useful habits. Don't hang around with anyone that isn't a baptized Jehovah's Witness. It's incredible. And none of this is to mention, I always question why they automatically think that every Jehovah's Witness, when sizing up friendship or someone else's character, is just void of common sense. Like I have no ability to choose a good person from a bad person. The differentiator is baptized JW, non-baptized JW. That's it. And then I realized that none of this mattered. Not in their minds. It only truly matters that they weren't a Jehovah's Witness. That's it. It's a very real dynamic in that organization. Shifting gears, and again, a peek into all things bad association and how they spoil useful habits in Jehovah's Witnesses. My brain could never and still can never make sense of anything the governing body ever said on bad association for one of the following reasons. So let's just focus on this one following reason. It's always created and presented quite a conundrum that I was never able to justify on a mental or emotional level in my entire time as a Jehovah's Witness. As we've stated, they're regularly commanded to not associate with anyone that isn't a baptized J-Dub. But at the same time, those same Jehovah's Witnesses are told that their future everlasting life is completely dependent upon going into random neighborhoods and telling those same non-JWs that they love them and that they've arrived at their door to save their life. I literally can't take you out and eat a donut with you, but if you agree and obey everything I'm about to tell you, you can live forever. And if you don't agree, you're worldly, and birds are going to eat your guts while I watch on. Have a fantastic day. This is real. Am I the only one who put any amount of thought to this concept? No, I cannot have you over to my house for dinner. However, I'll let you come to my house and study this publication made by 8 whack jobs in upstate New York. If you accept everything I say at that Bible study, by the way, it's not a Bible study, it's in a 5th grade reading level publication written by 8 guys in upstate New York, then I'll let you come to my house and you can be my friend. However, if you ever disagree or stop this study or don't get in a pool of water, I'll act like you have a contagious disease and never speak to you again. But I love you. So if you're keeping track of the governing body's message here, don't you dare go out to dinner with a worldly person or help them when they're in need, when they're depressed, at wit's end. You can't date them, or you can't just be their friend, or you can't give them a ride, or you can't go to happy hour with them after work, or you can't hang out with them as your workmates, or you can't be their little buddy or their little girlfriend at school, or. But if you can get them to open their door and listen to a message not found anywhere in the Bible about a paradise earth, if you can get them to do that, trust you, get to a kingdom hall and into that pool of water, good. They can now be your friend. If you can't, you are to continue to call them worldly and let them know that they're fit for destruction at Armageddon. I'm sure the neighbor that I ignore every other day is going to listen eagerly on Saturday morning when I just randomly show up at his door, right? It's literally, in my mind, sort of like a guy approaching a girl, telling her she's beautiful, asking her to dinner. When she says, no thanks, you're not my type, you as the guy then say, well, I thought you were ugly anyway, and I hope you get hit by lightning. Bye. That's literally the message. This is the message that seeps and penetrates into the mind and psyche and heart of a Jehovah's Witness who just wants to make a friend, who just wants to be friendly, kind to a neighbor, help someone out. You see this at every level. Even in disaster relief among Jehovah's Witnesses, the worldly people don't get much. Every now and then they'll help out some worldly people so they can pop it into the magazine as an experience of how they helped their neighbors or worldly people. But in general, you will see that they only help other Jehovah's Witnesses in the worst moments. In the worst moments, in disaster. This is how you are taught by the governing body to seek association or friendships. It's unreal. And as for that guy that asks out the girl, she says, no, you're not my type. And he says, well, you're ugly and I want you to get hit by lightning anyway now. That guy gets to count field service time while he does it. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters to them. And make no mistake, some non-Jehovah's Witnesses see right through this stuff, this selfish, what really amounts to borderline cruel conduct by a witness that's at the door, even if they don't mean it to be. In my mind, field service, the ministry, the preaching work that they say differentiates them as the one true religion, and this subject of association, friendship, and people, to me, it is the ultimate MLM pyramid scheme. Get in my upline or downline, or you're out altogether. You're dead. We will dump you. Is it really any different? And if you're thinking at this point, didn't Jesus say to love our neighbor as one of his 2 rules to being a Christian? You'd be correct. And the governing body has gotten you to believe, well, he did, but loving your neighbor means they have to agree with us 8 guys in New York and get into our corporation, organization as soon as humanly possible. Otherwise, we don't have to love you at all. Again, Jesus forgot to mention any of this in the Gospels. You'd think the most critical decision you'd ever make would be mentioned there. He forgot. And to take it a step further, we now label you as worldly, as bad association, and until you become our friend on our terms, you're going to die. By the way, the 8 guys in New York are going to be part of it. Tony Morris in particular can't wait to get involved. Just watch him blow out matches, talk about split open hot dogs, and all the other gross things that guy says. It's incredible. Bit of a rant. At my core, I am a people person. And that's strange because I know this will shock some. I'm very introverted. I'm very private. I like to, it's not in my nature. It exhausts me after a few minutes. But I love people. I'm fascinated by them. They're all the perspective, the differences in life and in the way they see things. Jehovah's Witnesses, you're just a number to these guys. You're a time slip. So on matters of friendship, kindness, empathy, a hug, mowing the lawn for the elderly lady across the street, all of that stuff, you have to suddenly in your mind and heart start to question all of it because they're bad association. 1 Corinthians 15:33. And they very well may be spoiling your useful habits. How? They don't expound on that. But are you ready for this? Bad association doesn't just apply to living, breathing human beings. The kids in your class, the folks at work, your neighbors, the guy you encounter at a charity you're a part of, a soup kitchen. No, it doesn't just apply to living, breathing human beings. Bad association and the endless warnings that come with it also apply, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, to the following things. Are you ready? Many will recognize this. Bad association and how to recognize it and avoid it applies to all things entertainment. It applies to music. It applies to books. It applies to cartoons. It applies to everything that isn't made by the 8 guys in upstate New York. Think I'm exaggerating? Think again. The Watchtower of January 1st, 1999, pages 3 through 5, under the aptly titled article, Bad Association, says, says this, quote, "Today, the average child watches 7 hours of television per day. By the end of grade school, he's seen over 8,000 murders and 100,000 acts of violence. So says the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families." Not mentioned in that book is going to meetings every week and obeying 8 guys in New York. Don't let that bother you. Back to the quote. What effect does such exposure have on a child? Experts, yes, we're going to talk to the experts now. Experts do not agree among themselves about that, but the Bible strongly warns against bad associations. It says, for example, he that is having dealings with the stupid ones will fare badly, end quote. This whole reasoning on entertainment and bad association has made me laugh from the beginning of time. The same parents that won't let you ride bikes with young Timmy next door are the same adults watching television shows that feature violence, sex, lying, stealing, smoking, you name it. And I've always been pretty sure that young Timmy next door isn't doing those things. But the governing body tells grown adults that what they're watching and listening to is just like associating with the artist or the actor in real life. Look, I'm not naive. Fill your head with garbage, garbage comes out. If you do deal with stupid people, usually bad things happen. Pretty common sense part of life. Every religion, every philosopher has taught this, and it is fact. But it goes to a whole new level with the guys in New York. Trust me, I never hung out with Rat or Motley Crue or Prince, but I wore those albums out. And incidentally, never could play the guitar, can't sing, couldn't even remotely look like Prince if I wanted to, but never mind that. The governing body is sure in billions of pages to warn parents that their kids are also in danger of forming friendships with Bugs Bunny, the Roadrunner, He-Man, and even Scooby-Doo, Pinocchio, and a whole host of other cartoon characters. From that same Watchtower article, we get this inspired message from Jesus who's watching on in heaven. It says, quote, this is an experience, one of those classic governing body experiences they put to literature that cannot be corroborated, no details exist. It makes you scratch your head a little bit. And it says, quote, a mother in Luxembourg was studying the Bible with one of Jehovah's Witnesses. One day she told the witness that in the evenings, her two daughters of 7 and 8 years of age were very quarrelsome and aggressive. The witness asked what the girls did during the evenings. The mother said that they watched television while she cleaned up the kitchen. What programs? Oh, some cartoons, replied the mother. When her visitor mentioned that such programs are often violent, the girl's mother promised to monitor them. The very next day, the mother reported that she was shocked at the cartoons that her daughters were watching. They featured imaginary monsters from outer space that viciously destroyed everything in their path. She explained to her daughters that Jehovah hates violence and is not happy when we watch such cruelty. Keep that sentence in mind. We're coming back to that one. It goes on to say the girls wanting to please Jehovah, of course they did. They were, 5, 6, 7, agreed to do some drawing and painting instead of watching television. I'm going to go on a limb and say they were drawing Noah's Ark or Paradise. Immediately, their aggressive conduct changed and the family atmosphere improved. End quote. Who doesn't love a report from an anonymous person on how taking Saturday morning cartoons away from their kids and getting them into a minivan to hand out watchtowers in the neighborhood has been life-changing to their family? It was the cartoons, the bad association. Let's get those off our TVs, out of your pajamas, eating donuts on a Saturday morning, and into a minivan where you can hand out literature and smile at an adult who's looking on sadly thinking, oh my God, they're ruining this kid's life. And don't even think that isn't what's happening. But I got to point out this experience. It's just too fun, and fun in a sick way, let's be honest. My favorite part of that little experience was the part that read like this, quote, oh my God, quote, they featured imaginary monsters from outer space that viciously destroyed everything in their path. She explained to her daughters that Jehovah hates violence and is not happy when he sees or when we watch such cruelty, end quote. I couldn't help but lean back in my chair, folks, and ask myself what I just read. Apparently, this mother has never read the Bible. She's never seen the My Book of Bible Stories book. She's never read a Watchtower or a Jehovah's Witness publication. Because, did I just read imaginary monsters in outer space coming down and killing everything? Does this sound familiar to anybody else? Jehovah himself, imaginary, sorry, gonna say it, invisible, from outer space, has been using violence and cruelty since the book of Genesis, where he made a tree, said don't eat from it, then he let demons have sex with his daughters, then he drowned women, children, and puppies while Noah sailed by, and he's going to do it all again any day now, and likes to show all of us in his publications and videos. This concept of bad association and this story, where it cites how Jehovah hates imaginary monsters from outer space that viciously destroy everything in their path by means of violence, is describing Jehovah, his angels, his son, and everything the governing body wants you to believe is about to happen. But again, like the story in Dinah, the good guys who do this stuff are okay because they're Jehovah's people. If they're not Jehovah's people like Shechem, we're going to slaughter them all. It is an unbelievable example of what the governing body is doing to the minds of Jehovah's Witnesses when it comes to choosing friends, association, their circle, their bros, their buddies. The very example they roll out, just like Dinah and Shechem, exposes Jehovah and his 8 guys, invisible monsters from outer space who come down and kill everything in their path. And Jehovah hates that, unless it's Jehovah and his invisible monsters from outer space doing it. But don't you dare watch Tom and Jerry or SpongeBob on Saturday mornings. They are bad association. I couldn't help but think, oh, look, honey, the kids are driving me nuts. Let's pop in the Lion King, get some peace, pour a glass of wine. Oh, no, we can't do that, honey. The kids might turn into Scar and be violent. Good point, babe. Bad association. So whether you're young or you're old, even the cast of Game of Thrones or Stranger Things, love that show, are a danger to you as a Jehovah's Witness. And of course, the media. The media isn't free either, especially the outlets reporting on factual child abuse cases within Jehovah's Witnesses. They're all evil as well and to be avoided. The Watchtower Study Edition, August 2015 again, what a treasure trove, says this, quote, much of this world's media, such as television programs, websites, and books, God, even books are bad, can harm our relationship with Jehovah. This kind of material is not designed to help Christians have faith in Jehovah and his promises. Instead, it encourages people to trust in Satan's evil world. So we need to be careful that we do not choose to watch, read, or listen to anything that could cause us to have worldly desires. Soon, Satan's world and its harmful media will be destroyed. End quote. That's right, the same guys now that are doing public service announcements and paying for infomercials with news media outlets. True story, go find it. Those awful, bad reporters exposing our secret database of child abusers that we continue to hold in secret at world headquarters. Yeah, that media. So when you meet a Jehovah's Witness and they don't seem to know anything about what's going on in their little spiritual paradise, now you know why. Now you know. It's all bad association. They're encouraged to isolate themselves from all people, media, music, and anything else outside the 8 guys in New York or what the 8 guys in New York give them. Let me say that again. Everything outside Jehovah's Witnesses and the 8 guys in New York is bad. So say it with me again. It's a cult. Isolate. Insulate. Your circle of friends and family is completely dependent on any and all messaging coming from 8 guys you'll never meet in upstate New York. If you disagree with their teachings or you don't follow their weekly schedule for everlasting life, you will soon be marked at the very least as a weak person. And what does that mean to the rest of the congregation? Your bad association. So controlling are Jehovah's Witnesses that the governing body made sure to tell us that even the angels need to worry about association and who they associate with and who the angels' friends are. Did you know that? It's true. The Watchtower of February 15th, 2000, pages 10 through 15, under the bizarrely titled article, Getting to Know the Mind of Christ. I don't know how they claim to know that, but never mind. It says this, quote, that spirit creatures can be influenced by their association is indicated at Revelation 12, 3 and 4. Satan is there depicted as a dragon who is able to use his influence to get other stars or spirit sons to join him in a rebellious course. Compare Job 38, end quote. The Bible tells you it's because these genderless guys that don't have body parts got horny for human women. But Satan was the true reason. Bad association. By the way, he was bad association, but was allowed to hang out in heaven around Jehovah himself and all the other angels until 1914, according to the governing body, where then Jesus said, maybe we should kick you out of the house now. And then he didn't just kick him out of the house and get rid of him. He kicked him down to our house here on earth, where we could hang around with the chief angel of bad association. It's just unbelievable. And yet, even the invisible guys need to watch out who they spend time with. Even an angel can be influenced by other angels. The whole association thing is much more serious than you ever imagined. Wouldn't you agree? Oh, man. So who's with me here? Who out there as a kid or when they were in a Bible study with Jehovah's Witnesses learned to memorize or were exposed early on to 1 Corinthians 15:33? Bad associations spoil useful habits. Who's with me? As you can see in just a brief time, everything outside that organization is bad association. Leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, both young and old, to be completely dependent on that organization for everything in their life. And this causes tremendous pain when you decide to leave it, when you wake up. Unless you've disobeyed their take on 1 Corinthians 15:33 most of your life, you're going to be left with no friends and no one around you. For any Jehovah's Witness or PMO listening, please cultivate relationships outside your local congregation. Start there. I'm not telling you to go hang out in alleys with drug dealers. I think you're probably pretty smart, intelligent human being that is more than capable of recognizing what's good for you. And if something isn't, getting help for that or avoiding it. But cultivate friendships. Expand your horizons. Look outside the organization. If you're a kid, and I hope you have permission to listen to this, I guess we're on the World Wide Web. We're out on all the major podcast hosts and YouTube. Hopefully you have permission, but I'm going to tell you, get to know your classmates. Get to know some people around you. Be nice. Don't follow the governing body's formula of witnessing to the other kids in your class. Just get to know them as people. You're going to find out they're just like the rest of us. Some you'll grow close to, others you won't. It's okay. That's life. I also want to be really clear here, especially for children, which is my soft spot. I promise you that watching Pinocchio isn't going to turn you into a liar or that you're going to find a cricket to be best friends with. I promise. I promise you don't have to live in the ocean if you watch SpongeBob and do what he does. You won't become He-Man if you're watching that on Saturday mornings. I'm dating myself here, but you get the point. If you're an adult, the guys in the Marvel Universe, you're not going to become Tony Stark and Iron Man by watching the movie. I promise. On all things friendship, and friendship is truly such a treasure in this world. As we get older, that circle narrows almost by default. But my God, friends are so wonderful. And we're all so imperfect and so broken in so many ways, flawed. But to have a good friend, someone you can lean on, associates, people that you can enjoy an evening out with, There's nothing wrong with it, and there never has been. When Dinah went out to be among the girls in the neighborhood, whether that's a true story or not is debatable, she wasn't seeking terrible things. She wasn't. Don't buy the story. Don't buy the propaganda. Friends are amazing, beautiful, wonderful part of life. So is music, so is entertainment. Be careful. Make sure you feed yourself the good stuff. But on all things the governing body tries to feed its people, just know this. Ask yourself this. Why are they trying to isolate me from everyone? Why are they trying to make my life so insular? What are they trying to hide? Go out there. Hug your neighbor today. Help an elderly person. Ride that bike with a little guy in the neighborhood. If you're a little girl, go put makeup on. Have a tea party. Do something with a girlfriend in the neighborhood. All of this is what makes life amazing. So am I alone? 1 Corinthians 15:33, bad associations spoil useful habits. No shit. Don't get involved in bad things. Pretty simple message. However, that does not mean you have to dedicate your life to Jehovah's Witnesses. All right, I'm going to end it there. I want to thank everybody for listening in. I appreciate all the comments, commentary, feedback, good, bad, critical, all of it. If I've missed any of it on social media or YouTube, I deeply apologize. I'm really trying to learn my way around those things. I am not particularly good at it. I'm obviously a big reader and don't spend a lot of time online, but I want to thank everyone. I do read whatever I am exposed to from the great people who may listen to this little show. Thanks a million. Go out there, make a friend today, people, and we will see you next week. Be well.